So last week against the Bengals, we saw a lot from guys on this Browns team that we needed to see on the offensive side of the ball. Odell Beckham, Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, this offensive line, even the tight ends to some extent, but not fully. So we saw a lot of what we saw from the offensive side of the ball. But the defensive side of the ball still leaves a lot to be desired. And there are a ton of players on that side of the ball that we either need to see more from or we need to see more of. So who are those players? Well, let's talk about it. Real quick before this video starts, I want to make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload a ton of content coming out during this season. You want to make sure you get the best content available. Make sure you're subscribed and notified. Lock it in here. Also, I want to thank everybody who came out and supported AFC North Talk. That channel just got over 1,000 subscribers. Me, Tony, Ace, Sonny, we all would like to thank you for the support and thank you for subscribing and continuing to show it to those live chats. And if you want to see what all the hype and fuss is about AFC North Talk, make sure you subscribe to that channel. The link will be in the description as always. Again, thank you guys for helping us get to that mark, and hopefully much more to come from that channel. As always, I love doing it. Now, the Browns have some interesting issues going on. A lot of guys in the secondary coming back from injury, and the defensive line is performing, but it's not necessarily the guys you were expecting to performing. So it's kind of a mismatch and an amalgamation of guys who need to step up or guys who need to see more snaps. And the first guy I'm going to have in this category, and he's definitely a guy who needs to step up, is Olivier Vernon. I think it's fair to describe Olivier Vernon's stint in Cleveland, at least its first year, as disappointing, underwhelming, and injury-riddled. The start of this season is starting off very disappointing, much more disappointing than last year's was, injury-riddled, and again, underwhelming, as Olivier Vernon has posted some terrible numbers, some terrible grades, and some terrible metrics. Again, it's kind of frustrating that Olivier Vernon, who was paid a lot of money and traded here to be a big kind of cornerstone piece of this defense alongside Myles Garrett, has continued this disappointing narrative throughout 2 weeks of the 2020 season. He's injured again. He can't stay on the field consistently. It's been a thing his entire career. It didn't happen for 1 year. He had a good year in New York, and then he went back to getting injured every year. And even when he's not injured, the play has been awful. He is the lowest graded edge defender in both pass rush and run defense situations on this Cleveland Browns roster. The entire roster, he's the worst edge defender that has a eligible grade according to PFF. And if you look at what he did against the Baltimore Ravens, it passes the eye test that he's looked terrible. Although he's paid $12 million a year after restructuring his deal, he is thoroughly getting outplayed by a much cheaper Adrian Claiborne and Porter Gustin. And no disrespect to Porter Gustin, but Porter Gustin should not be outplaying somebody who's paid $12 million a year when he was an undrafted free agent a few years ago. I think for the Cleveland Browns, it's time for a reckoning about Olivier Vernon. There's been a lot of optimism about him because understandably so, when he was healthy, he was really good, but that just doesn't seem to be the case. And to give this front office some slack, they tried really bad to have a reckoning about Olivier Vernon. They tried with Yannick Ngakoue, couldn't get him. They tried with Jadeveon Clowney, couldn't get him to agree to terms. It's really not for lack of trying that they haven't had this reckoning, and they went with the restructuring. That was probably their third or fourth option, but now we're here. The results are worse than last year through 2 weeks, and it's time for the reckoning with Olivier Vernon. Because this guy was brought here to be Myles Garrett's tag team partner, to be on the opposite side of Myles Garrett, so Myles Garrett doesn't get double teamed. It has not been the case. Myles Garrett still gets triple teamed. Nobody does anything with Olivier Vernon, and he still doesn't produce. This dude who you traded a really good right guard for and is supposed to be a Pro Bowler in Olivier Vernon has turned into somebody who I believe his role on this 2020 team will be a rotational veteran at best, if not injured the entire year. And if you're Olivier Vernon, you need to live up to your contract much sooner than later, because, man, it's going to look bad to every other team to see that you at $12 million a year got benched for Porter Gustin. And no disrespect to Porter Gustin. He's actually on this list for good reasons, but not a good look for OV. And that kind of disappointing production, that kind of drop in play, that kind of injury riddledness and inability to stay healthy is a fast pass out of the league. So if you're Olivier Vernon, more than just staying on the Cleveland Browns or helping the Cleveland Browns produce, because the other guys have been much better and have filled those roles, if you're Olivier Vernon, you need to look at this year as fighting for your chance and opportunity to stay in the NFL. Because if this season goes as the first 2 weeks have indicated, he will not be in the NFL in 2021. If Olivier Vernon has been a reckoning that the Browns have needed to answer for quite a while now, Porter Gustin has been a revelation. Much like Vernon, brought in by the last regime, the guy who kind of stuck at the end of last season, a former 5-star recruit, Porter Gustin has been quite the surprise throughout the first 2 weeks of the season and in training camp. Given a close amount of snaps, a little bit less than Olivier Vernon, he's graded out much better in both areas than Olivier Vernon. He, along with really solid play from Adrian Claiborne, have quickly made Olivier Vernon obsolete. It's kind of telling about Olivier Vernon that Adrian Claiborne can take advantage of the triple teams that Myles Garrett gets, and Porter Gustin can take advantage of these triple teams that Myles Garrett gets. But Olivier Vernon, for the life of him, can't figure out how to take advantage, can't win and take advantage on these double teams and triple teams that Myles Garrett gets throughout the season. But this isn't about Olivier Vernon. This is about Porter Gustin. The thing I like the most about Porter Gustin and where I think he's going to find his role on this team is in run defense, because he's very good. He's very athletic for somebody who is a undrafted free agent. He's also very disciplined. Very disciplined. The strip sack was a very disciplined play by Porter Gustin. Also, the read option play that got blown up by Joe Burrow, that was a very disciplined play by Porter Gustin. Porter Gustin has shown an ability to kind of set the edge and be disciplined, and he's been a huge part in why the Browns' rush defense has been much better. And with Myles Garrett, because while Myles isn't bad in this area, he's not Myles Garrett good in this area, is run defense. And when you have Myles Garrett, you want somebody who can kind of do those things that Myles Garrett's not necessarily going to do, because you don't want Myles Garrett to play super disciplined because he's so athletic. So Porter Gustin kind of fits in that role really well on rundown. So I like his fit with this team. I like his fit with this defense, and I like his fit next to Myles Garrett. He's only had 31 snaps so far this season. Olivier Vernon's had 40. So I want to see Porter Gustin's snap count continue to go up, because I think the more it goes up, the more good things will happen for this defensive line, the more they'll be able to stop the run, and the more Porter Gustin's going to shine. I think he's going to have a really solid year this year if they use him in the right situations. Malcolm Smith started last week's game against Cincinnati, and he played a starter amount of snaps, and he actually played really well against both rush and pass coverages. You can't really make up for B.J. Gustin being on the other side of him, but he did really well in what they asked him to do. He had 75 snaps, graded out at close to a 70 PFF grade, which is really good. The Browns are a team that needs two things from their linebacking. One, good linebacking play, and two, good veteran linebacking play, and Malcolm Smith is both good and a good veteran. So these are good things for the Cleveland Browns. What I hope to see is that Malcolm Smith kind of takes over some of those veteran duties that B.J. Gustin is doing right now, because I think B.J. Gustin is really good in a situational role, while Malcolm Smith is more like the guy that can be out there on every down and kind of be the green dot and be the play caller on defense. So I hope those roles transition over to Malcolm so you can take B.J. off the field more often, so he doesn't have to have so many snaps, and you can give those snaps to Malcolm Smith without sacrificing those snaps to Mack Wilson or Sione Takitaki. Mack Wilson has a ton of potential, and Sione Takitaki has been really solid as a linebacker so far throughout the season. Again, it's more about getting BJ off the field on 3rd and 4th down. I think Malcolm Smith is much more suited to play this role, and since he joined the team kind of late in the middle of camp, I get why he doesn't have that role. BJ's been with the team since OTAs, so he got that role. I hope as the season continues that role kind of goes to Malcolm Smith, because I think the defense would be a lot better with that change being made. So Malcolm Smith, throughout 2 games, played very well. I would love to see more of him, and I would love to see him in more different situations, and I would love to see him in replacement of BJ Gustin in some specific situations. So I did a whole video about how bad BJ Gustin and Tavier Thomas have been in coverage, and I kind of feel bad about it because it's true. They're probably the leak on the defense, but they're really not paid to do that, and they never should be asked to do those things. Tavier Thomas is a special teams guy. He's a special teams specialist. He shouldn't be starting at slot or at nickel for your team. Same thing goes for BJ Gustin. He's a good run defender. He's a terrible coverage guy. He should not be asked to be dropping back and take all these coverage snaps that he has to take because he's the green dot, and you can't take the green dot off the field when you have no replacement. But these 2 dudes, and I'm going to give Ronnie Harrison kind of a pass here because he hasn't been with the team long, but he's been terrible in 8 snaps. But Andrew Sadeo does not have the snap count thing to point at. He's played every snap, 151 snaps, has a 42 PFF grade, and it's awful in every area. Run defense, pass coverage, and quite frankly, if you watch the Browns, it passes the sniff test. He's been bad. Now, some of this is due to all the leaks that are in front of Andrew Sadeo, so he just ends up in some bad situations that are going to count against him because he's just the only guy who's there because everybody else blew the coverage. I get that. I don't think he's as bad as a 42 PFF grade. I think he's a little bit better than that, but still, he has to play much better. And he has to play much better because the Browns don't really have a replacement for him because the replacement is Ronnie Harrison. He's not played well, and he's also not a free safety. He's much more of a strong safety / kind of a box safety. He's really not a free safety. He's not fast enough. He ran a 4.7 40. And I believe the Browns put him at free safety in a cover 2 look against Cincinnati. And the combination of him and Terrence Mitchell got beat by a tight end on the left side of the field for a touchdown. So, again, Ronnie can't be out there as a free safety, and Andrew's the only one who can. And if he's going to have to be out there for every snap because he's the only free safety this team has because Grant Delpit went down, and we're kind of feeling that Grant Delpit injury right now, then that's not good. He has to play better. He doesn't have to be shut down, but he has to be much better than 42. We know Carl Joseph is going to mainly be somebody who's going to help you in run defense and be suspect in coverage. If that's going to be the case, Andrew Sadeo cannot be out there as much as he is. You might have to look at putting one of your better DBs who aren't going to play. So maybe if Greedy Williams come back, Terrence Mitchell goes out there and plays a little safety. You got to figure out something because it's not working with Andrew Sadeo through 2 games. And maybe when these DBs come back and maybe when more ground can be covered and less is asked of Andrew Sadeo, he can be much better. But for right now, he needs to play better. He needs to be in a better situation because he's not helping the defense at all. Again, Grant Delpit is severely missed right now, much more than I anticipated. But that's my thoughts on the players we either need to see more of or more from. Let me know down in the comment section below who your players are, who do you want to see more of and more from. But again, guys, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day and have a good night.